Good afternoon and welcome to the Streakers podcast. We are the ones that got away. I am Mason Migliara. That is Patrick Previty. Hope everyone is having themselves a fantastic day. We are still here on YouTube. This is our second episode here on YouTube. But don't worry, we're still on Spotify for everyone who likes to, listen as they're driving down the road, going to work, going to a tailgate, whatever the heck you're doing on this fabulous weekend. Talking about the weekend, today's Saturday for us. Probably going to upload this here a little bit later, but we got championship weekend. Basically, playoff implications are on the line. And last night, that was the case for two teams in Washington and Oregon in the Pac-12. Patrick, this game was phenomenal. It lived up to the hype. It was very similar to the game that they played early on in the season, and it also had the same kind of result, a 3-point win there for Washington. So that pretty much solidifies them into the college football playoffs. But what does this say for Oregon? Like, is there a shot for Oregon to get in? Because they're a damn good team, dude.
Yeah, they are. And you know what? It's a shame, I guess, in a sense that they lose twice over by six total points to a team that is going to be in the playoff, that they don't get another shot at any other teams outside of the conference. I would say it's pretty much over at this point. I think just with how competitive it's been, I don't really see it happening. I guess it's happened before in the SEC where like Alabama or Georgia lose in the SEC championship game and then end up falling from wherever they are down to like 4 or 3, and they end up making the playoff. I don't see that right now for Oregon, especially since they did lose earlier in the season to
Hmm.
Washington, so that gives them two losses. I will have to see. Like, I wonder. That's kind of interesting to think about. I wonder if there is a disaster scenario that could happen that could get them in. I mean, Texas would have to lose, but then I think they would even give like Ohio State the nod if it really came down to that. You'd have Alabama would have to lose. You'd almost need it to go chalk, and then Oregon could sneak in at like 4 or something like that. But yeah, it seems to be pretty much over. But shout out to the Huskies, man. They stayed the course. 13-0 in the Pac-12 conference, the last year of it, and in one of the most competitive years that it's had in, like, I would
Hmm.
say probably the last at least 5 or 6 years. Very, very, very good this year. With all the teams that seem to be peaking at the wrong time, I guess, for the
Hmm.
conference as a whole. Um,
Yeah.
but but
It
yeah,
was
that Washington team is really good. I'm very interested to see what they can do to Michigan. I think they would probably match up 2-3 with Michigan.
Yeah, I agree. That'll be a hell of a game for sure. Michael Penix, he's definitely in the Heisman conversation, and same with Bo Nix. But neither quarterback yesterday was perfect. They each had an interception, but it looks like look, Penix played just a little bit better, in my opinion. He was able to manage the game a little bit better, and Dylan Johnson was really the difference maker on the ground for Washington with 152 yards on the ground and two rushing touchdowns. I think he also had
And a passing touchdown.
a pass. Yeah, I was just looking for that. Yeah, he had a passing touchdown. That's crazy for a running back. So really, really great stuff overall for Washington, and just unfortunate for Oregon and Bo Nix. Both Bo Nix and Michael Penix, they've been in college football for a while. Does Bo Nix go back for another year? Is he going to declare for the draft? Is he going to play in the bowl game that they're going to get? What are you thinking?
Well, that's interesting. I don't know if Bo Nix actually has any eligibility left. I mean, it seems like everybody's got unlimited eligibility, in all honesty. But considering he's going to be 24 in February, I think it's time for him to go. I think that this was his sixth season. I think he played 4 at Auburn and now 2 at Oregon. I think he's shown enough to go to the NFL, in all honesty. I mean, how much better can it get this year? He was just so dominant the entire season. He just ran into the buzz saw that was Washington essentially this year. So they weren't, or Oregon did, and they just weren't able to get over the hump. I mean, he had like over 40 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. I mean, you really can't ask for a better like closing argument in a sense for a player or prospect. So I don't know why he wouldn't go to the NFL draft. Now, as far as playing in the bowl game, honestly, like how many quarterbacks in college football don't play in the bowl game? Like, I'm trying to think. Like, maybe did Will Levis not play in the bowl game last year? Like I'm trying to think how many players don't go. I mean, they're gonna be in a New Year's Six bowl, so it's gonna be a very good game.
Hmm.
Good matchup, a chance to really show potentially to show off to more scouts on the national stage. I don't really know. I mean, obviously now we're getting into the point where the combine and everything like that and all the pre-draft stuff like reigns supreme. So like that is where the board seems to move the most
Yep.
nowadays. So
Yep.
maybe he would go and focus on that. But he's got a pretty good size. Um, so I don't really see like him being, maybe not like worried about it, but like in a sense, like focusing on it,
Yeah.
putting all
I
of
just
his eggs in that basket.
I just heard it late in the broadcast last night. I think Kirk Herbstreit said it. He was like, "We'll see if he ends up playing in the bowl game," and that was very interesting to me because I don't see Bo Nix as someone who's just going to skip a game like that when it's going to be such a great game. Because I still think that they would be ranked five, so they could end up playing Ohio State, uh, depending on how the chips all fall. But if things remain kind of how they're at, they would end up playing Ohio State, and I think that would be a great game overall. So I think that can only help him. I don't see it hurting him. So I don't know. And then we'll see what happens with Washington. I think you're right. The game against Michigan will be fantastic if that's how everything falls out. And then looking at the other games that we got coming up later today, we got Oklahoma State taking on Texas. We talked about all this already a little bit, but we'll still highlight it again. Really unfortunate for Texas that they can't avenge that loss against Oklahoma from earlier in the year in this Big 12 championship game. And then we got Georgia and Alabama at 4 o'clock. That's probably the best game of the day, in my opinion, because if Alabama's able to go and beat Georgia, that is that's just going to create chaos in the college football world. And then Michigan playing Iowa. That game is probably going to be. I mean, you were saying it earlier. You said that Iowa has one of the best defenses you've ever seen, but their offense is just pitiful. So we'll see what happens there if Michigan and their number two ranked and undefeated season will stay the same. It's talking about Florida State taking on Louisville in the ACC championship. It's it's looking grim for Tate Rodemaker. It doesn't look like he's going to play. I think he's doubtful at the moment, or just a game time decision. So if Florida State is going to be running with a freshman quarterback in the ACC championship, if they can win that game, they've earned their spot in the football in the playoffs. But if not, I can't see them making it if they're going to be at what 12-1 and not an ACC championship. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, especially considering they have that loss without Jordan Travis, I think is almost even worse because the committee is definitely taking into account injuries and they're
Hmm.
definitely taking into account like what does the team look like right now. I mean, you're already seeing that with Texas and Alabama, that conversation, people are pointing that it's that Texas's win over Alabama was already back in week 2. So they're looking at how the teams are playing right now. So I could easily see I think it's probably, and Florida State knows this, and I think this is probably the feeling of everybody. They got to win this one, and they're probably going to be able to get in now, as long as just no chaos happens. They just need Alabama not to win against Georgia, and nothing crazy to happen. I think the committee, in all honesty, would give them the respect and put them over Texas.
Hmm.
So that'd be the only other concern that they might have.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. What the college football community does is a very tough job, and I'm glad that we don't have to do it. But who knows? Maybe one day we'll get there. But moving
Absolutely.
in, moving into some NFL, that's what we're here for today. We had a game on Thursday night. Dallas was able to take the victory over the Seahawks in a very thrilling game, 41-35. What was your biggest takeaway from this shootout of a game?
Dak Prescott, man, you love him or hate him, but you gotta respect him.
Yep.
Okay. Like this Dak Prescott that we're seeing right now is the best version that we've ever seen in his career. And he is definitely, in my opinion, solidifying himself into MVP talks. Now, I don't want to get too ahead of myself because I've been saying like they've been beaten up on, the lesser competition and all that good stuff. But the Seahawks are a good team, and you don't really get teams that take care of business like the Cowboys do, in my opinion, in the NFL all the time. It's still week to week, like we like to say. Um, like the old saying goes, like you could just you could just lose at any given Sunday. Uh,
Hmm.
so and the Cowboys really don't, unless they're playing a very like a upper echelon team, obviously outside of the Cardinals. But for the most part, they take care of business, and I think that that is starting to build Dak a case. And I also think that there's not like a runaway MVP right now, other than maybe like what Jalen Hurts. I think he's got the best odds.
Yeah.
Um, but like Dak Prescott is really putting together a good case, and that was my takeaway. I am interested in what they can do against the Eagles, Bills, and Dolphins coming up, and they got the Lions after that. I'm very
Yeah.
interested in what they can do over the next 4 games because I think part of me was thinking before this game, and maybe after they lost to the Niners and got killed, I put it on the back burner a little bit. But it was Eagles, 49ers, and then was it everybody else in the NFC, or was it Eagles, 49ers, and Cowboys? Could they hang? I mean, I think I'm leaning more towards Eagles, 49ers, and Cowboys.
I agree. I think it's Eagles, 49ers, and Cowboys. The one thing that was kind of plaguing Dallas was they weren't beating teams with a winning record, the same kind of narrative that the Dolphins have. So they were able to beat this team, and Dak had himself another fantastic game, as you were saying, another 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, what has he got in his last, like, what, 5 or 6 games? I think he's at, like, what, 1,300 yards and what, 15 touchdowns or something? Let's pull up his
Yeah, he's
game log.
he's been playing extremely well. I mean, he's got 26 touchdowns, 6 picks on the season,
Hmm.
playing really well. So yeah, in his last five, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 4 touchdowns, no picks, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick, 3 touchdowns, no picks.
Hmm.
And then in all those games, pretty good yardage outside of the Panthers game, which was obviously he was done by like halftime.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like he was done at halftime. Like I don't know. This Dallas Cowboys team is legit this season, without a doubt. But then turning over to the Seahawks side of things, they're now sitting at what, 6-6? Yeah, 6-6 on the season, 2-4 on the road, and it doesn't look like they're going to win their division. So if they were to even sneak into the playoffs somehow, they're going to end up going on the road, and they just haven't been able to play that well so far this season. They're probably going to have to play a higher level team if they get to the playoffs, like a 49ers or a Cowboys again. So I don't know. I'm not really feeling too confident right now for the Seahawks. They played well in this game. I mean, DK Metcalf popped off. He had 134 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was all over Bland. There was all the memes and everything saying, "Oh, Bland can't cover anyone who's going to be bagging Publix bags next off season and all that stuff." And he had like the 5 pick sixes this year and everything, and now Metcalf was able to surpass him in the total number of touchdowns on the season. Um, but for the Seahawks, man, I think it's probably going to be time to start looking towards the future. Is it time for Pete Carroll to be out of there, you think? Or is that too extreme?
Yeah, that's definitely too extreme. I see where people might be coming from as far as just wanting to clean house. I think there's a little bit of frustration, maybe building because last year they obviously made the playoffs and they signed Geno Smith, but they didn't give him a huge deal, and they could have been in the market for like a quarterback and made Geno that like bridge QB because I think
Hmm.
that's where everybody was looking, was like, oh, like how can Gino really sustain this level of play? And honestly, for the most part, he kind of has, outside of being injured and playing injured, that you could tell like last week before this Cowboys game that he was obviously hurt. Um, but outside of that, he's played well. And for the most part, I don't think Pete Carroll's at all the issue. I just think that they are probably going to be in the market for another quarterback next year. I think and you know what? They still have a chance to make the playoffs this year. They're going to have to take care of business. They have the 49ers next week, which is a very important game. I mean, 49ers play the Eagles this Sunday, which is the game of the week, probably. And that is not a division game, so that kind of helps them out a little bit, and that's potentially a loss. So they maybe didn't lose any ground in the standings there. I mean, I think it would be a long shot for them to win the division, but considering that they have the 49ers still on the slate, they control a fair amount of their own destiny in a sense. Because if they were to win next week and the 49ers lost to the Eagles, I mean, they'd be 7-6, and the 49ers are 8-6. So, or excuse me, 8-5. But yeah, that's obviously just one game behind. So in the
Hmm.
loss column.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens with that. I think also they would, if they're in the market for a quarterback right now, the Seahawks, for this upcoming draft, that would there's a lot of good quarterbacks coming out of college right now. So that would be a very opportune time to grab a franchise guy uh over there in Seattle. But
Yeah, and
moving
I think
on,
wait, oh,
oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Okay.
No.
I was gonna say, yeah, before we move on, and I think they could get a guy in like the mid first round.
Oh,
Like I don't
100%.
think they would have to trade up, but maybe you could see something like trading up. I remember like the
Yeah.
last year of Alex Smith, like you had the guy, there was no chance that Patrick Mahomes was gonna play at all that year. And then he played
Mhm.
in the final game against Denver or whatever. You can do something like that. Like you did, Geno Smith is a good starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm on that train. I'm not saying that he can't start in the NFL, but the Seahawks have a lot of talent on that roster. I mean, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So, like, if you wanted to do a bridge quarterback and take another year and also get your cap right, I don't see why not, and I don't see why they wouldn't take a quarterback and at least at least in the first like 3 or 4 rounds. I mean, wherever they want, but like a
Mhm.
serious guy that can actually start, not just some guy that they're going to take a flyer on just cuz. Like a
Yeah.
real potential starting quarterback in the NFL. So I think top 3 rounds or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. That'll be a good talking point for Seattle and something that I think they should be looking at. But let's move into the Sunday slate. I don't know if you got to pull it up, but do you want to make a little parlay as we're going through this today? I think it'd be a good idea.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, we'll do a 12 legger or whatever. How many
Yeah,
games are on Sunday? I believe
yeah,
12.
yeah, something like that. Whatever we got. But we'll start off with the Jets and the Falcons. First of all, we got Aaron Rodgers coming back to practice, so it is time to talk about it because that is absurd. He tore his Achilles 13 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago, I think 13 weeks ago. And he is back on a football field. I don't know what voodoo dolphin noises magic that he's got going on in his rehab, but it's remarkable that he is back on a football field, and it's good for the Jets for sure. But I don't think it's realistic that he plays this season just based on where the Jets are at in the standings and in their season.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how like that might be the reason why he doesn't end up playing? Like
Hmm.
I've heard a ton of different things from like, all these YouTube doctors and all that sort of stuff. Apparently it's a real thing that he could like actually go and play. He would obviously have like some legitimate concerns about like re-injury and stuff like that, which
Hmm.
seems to be the case with like calf injuries a lot, where re-injury is like a big deal. But it's amazing that like he can go out there and play and he'll have limitations. Um, and realistically, the only thing that's going to be stopping him right now is just the fact that the Jets probably won't be in playoff contention.
Yep.
And so
I
he
think
and he obviously mentioned that he just doesn't see a point, and thank God that he wouldn't just go out there in like the last 2 weeks of the season if they were like eliminated or it was just such a ridiculous long shot. You know, he wouldn't go out there and play. But um, it's kind of amazing when you look at it that that's the true reason why we're not going to see him this year. And I agree. I don't think that the Jets are going to be in playoff contention. But it's kind of amazing as well, just the motivation that he's given this team. I think. I mean, if I'm a Jets player, I'm dealing with Zach Wilson and the revolving door of like the backup Jets quarterbacks that they try to throw out there instead. I'm motivated now. I'm like, oh shoot, like if this guy's gonna, put his career on the line, because a re-injury or like any, like not just another torn Achilles, but like just a regular re-injury, I think almost probably maybe it doesn't shut the door on Aaron Rodgers, who knows, but like with him, but he's risking the rest of his career essentially.
Hmm.
And so if I'm a Jets player, man, I'm hyped. I'm I'm motivated. I'm like, yo, this guy's really down for the cause.
And if this motivates this team, I mean, looking at the standings, just because they're sitting at 15th out of 16th in the AFC does not mean there's no shot, because the 7 seed is a playoff spot, and that is held by the 6-5 Indianapolis Colts. Let's say the Colts lose and the Jets win. Colts are sitting at 6-6. Jets are sitting at 5-7. That's just a 1 game difference. And then Houston, Denver, they're tied, so one of them is going to hop in at 7-5. I mean, it's not over necessarily. It feels over, but this is a game that the Jets are favored in, and they can very easily win. Although the Falcons, they are in first place in the South over there in the NFC, but I don't see them being a great team. They're not a great team. Like, I think the Jets and this defense can do enough to let Tim Boyle throw a touchdown or two, and then bada bing, bada boom, you're sitting at 5-7, with Aaron Rodgers coming back in potentially 2 weeks.
Bada bing, bada boom. Yeah, no, there's certainly things that can happen. I mean, considering if they're in the hunt graphics, then hell, they'll have a shot, I
Yeah.
guess. I mean,
Hmm.
so you're telling me that there's a chance. That's kind of
Yep.
the vibe that's going on right now in New York. I mean, as long as they can just hold it together, I think we talked about this last episode. Like, I'm looking at 3 teams here that I think are probably going to fall out. The Steelers, Browns, and Colts from the
Hmm.
playoffs. So that's 3 spots open. I
It's
mean,
3 spots open.
I think it'll be taken by the Texans, Broncos, and Bills, but I'm also delusional about Buffalo. So maybe I need to pay more attention to the Jets because if Aaron Rodgers comes back, I mean, God, that's gonna be the biggest storyline of the NFL this entire season, I think.
It's going to be a shot of adrenaline for that entire team, that entire offense, and they could go on a win streak right there. So we'll have to see what happens. But I don't think either of us have much to say about the Falcons. I mean, maybe they'll use Bijan Robinson, but this Jets defense is just it's legit. And I don't know how Desmond Ridder or Heineke or whoever is going to be the quarterback there for Atlanta during this game. I don't know how they're going to manage it because it's a real threat.
Yeah, absolutely. So we both got Atlanta.
Yeah. Wait, wait, you do? You have Atlanta winning?
Yeah, I'm gonna have Atlanta winning. I'm not
I,
picking the Jets, man.
I'm gonna have to go with the Jets, man. The defense is really good for the Jets, and I just don't know how. It's basically picking which offense will do more.
Yeah,
And I think
I think it'll be like 13-10 Falcons. Like, I don't think it'll be, 35-31.
no, I'm gonna go with the Jets, man. I'm gonna go with the Jets. Give me the Jets. Just to win outright. I'm not gonna go with the +2 or anything. I guess I'll take the +2 because if they're gonna win, they're gonna win. So, um, yeah, we'll go with that. And then into the next game, we got the ah Patriots taking on the Chargers. This game is going to be very interesting, in my opinion, for the wrong reasons, I think. Uh, both of these teams are really underperforming this year, specifically the Patriots, man, sitting at 2-9. They're just waiting for the season to come to an end. It's been a dreadful year for them. But same thing with the Chargers, man. They're sitting at 4-7 with not a whole lot going for them. I know that you're wondering how Brandon Staley's still there. I'm still wondering how Brandon Staley is still there. I think if they do not win against the 2-9 New England Patriots, he's got to be out of there. He has to be.
I mean, I've been having the countdown going for a while now for Brandon Staley. It looks like they just don't want to fire him in season, which I get. I think from an organizational standpoint, and we talked about this last week, there are pros and cons to firing your coach mid-season, in my opinion. There are actual pros to it. Um, it looks like they're just going to ride this season out with him, in all honesty. Although I will say, man, if they lose to the Chargers or if they lose to the Patriots this week, there will definitely be a lot of people. Like, I think nationally, it'll be a bigger topic, calling for Staley's job because the the Patriots are in an offensive slump right now. I mean, outside of Ramondre Stevenson, who's rushed for like I believe, almost 300 yards over the last 3 games,
Hmm.
and with a few touchdowns, he's been playing pretty well. But outside of him, they have nothing else on offense. I mean, I don't even know if a starting quarterback has been announced yet. I mean, but it doesn't even really matter. Regardless, Brandon Staley, defensive coach, needs to shut down the Patriots. They should have no offense because they haven't had any all season. Um, if they were to win and score more than, the Golden Boy and his offense, I think that there's going to be obvious issues. But I think the main thing that I'm looking from this game, because we've talked about Staley a lot, is what the hell does Mac Jones do after this year? Because he's obviously not going to be the guy in New England anymore.
Mhm.
Is he going to be the guy somewhere else? Does he request to be cut or traded? I don't know. Like maybe he could get traded for like a fifth or sixth. I don't know.
Yeah,
That might even be too generous, honestly. His stock is so low right now. I don't even know who would take him. I think maybe somebody would take him as a backup, and he
yeah,
could he could sit behind somebody for a few years, kind of almost like how Jameis did it, like with the Saints. And then he did end up getting a shot, but he's been in and out of the lineup with injury. You know,
mhm.
I could see that. I could see that being his career trajectory right now. I mean, or
I do
maybe he
too.
gets another shot, like Tannehill, and goes somewhere else.
Ooh, like Tannehill. I don't
Yeah, I mean,
see the
Tannehill
thing.
didn't start out as a starter in Tennessee. He was behind Mariota
Oh
for
yeah,
the
you're
start of
right.
that year, but
You're right. You're right. But I don't think Tannehill was on the same like downward trajectory that Mac Jones is on. Like I think Mac Jones is hitting rock bottom right now. I don't think it could get any worse than it has for him right now. So
yeah, I agree. I don't think it could get any worse, Mason.
I,
His statistics are really, really awful this year. I mean, this is just one of the worst. Um, this is one of the worst seasons I've seen
often,
from a quarterback.
yeah, yeah. It's been a really really bad season. But I think out of New England it will be good for him, and as a backup will be good for him. It'll allow him, and he has to be behind a good quarterback. Like he can't be behind some like rookie or something like that. He needs to be behind a veteran quarterback, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's got 10 touchdowns and 12 picks on the year. They definitely need a veteran QB. I mean,
Hmm.
if you're looking at the last four games for this team since their win over Buffalo, 17 points, 17 points, 6 points, 7 points.
Yeah,
And Mac Jones has just been really, really, really bad. But, it can't all fall on him because Bailey Zappi, they keep trying to throw him in. I don't know why they keep trying to make that work. Because that's not working. He is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. If Mac Jones isn't, Bailey Zappi definitely isn't.
no,
And it's not working for either of them.
nope, not at all, not at all. So in this game, I think we both got the Chargers. Yeah,
Yeah, I still think they have enough to win this game. There's just no way. This would be a disaster scenario.
I agree. I agree. All right. So then the next game that we got is going to be the Saints taking on the Lions, right? Where's it at?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think this
Saints
could
hosting the
be
Lions.
this smells like a trap game for the Lions almost.
Mm,
I usually in trap games, the team is on fire, and then they, run into a lesser team, look over them or look past them, and they take an L. I don't think the Lions are looking past them. I just think that the Saints are sneaky good when they want to be, or when they can be, essentially. They can take down a team like the Lions, in my opinion. I'm going with the Lions because just Derek Carr, there's so many unknowns with him right now. He's just so up and down. I mean, they brought him in to be the next long-term quarterback since or after Drew Brees, and this season has just been so much meh from him. That's my only concern, and that's why I'm still going to pick the Lions, but I see this game being pretty close.
really?
Yeah.
Don't I don't see it that way. Just the offense on for New Orleans, all they got basically is Kamara and Olave. I guess that's not terrible. That's a good combo to have, but I just don't feel very confident in Derek Carr having all season. And I think the Lions, they're going to be coming off that rough game against Green Bay and that with the loss. And I think they're going to come out. Every time I've said that a team's going to come out angry, they don't end up playing that angry. But I think Dan Campbell's going to have this team ready to play, and I think Detroit is going to have their way with New Orleans, and they're going to take the victory here. The line is 4.5 here on ESPN Bet on our little Flip app. It's at -4. I'm taking Detroit -4.
I honestly think that the Saints are going to cover. I'm
Okay,
pretty close to picking them to win, but I just still don't see it. Like, I mean, with Derek Carr, it's just been so up and down.
fair enough.
Yeah.
But let's just move into the next one. We got the Colts taking on the Tennessee Titans. This is another matchup where it's two quarterbacks who are not supposed to be playing at the start of the season that are now in the starting lineup because due to injury and poor performance. So, which quarterback? And we got Gardner Minshew leading a playoff team at the moment, and Will Levis leading a Tennessee Titans team that is just trying to tread water and finish the rest of the season and not really having much expectation. What are your thoughts on this game?
Well, you covered the bases with the quarterbacks. I think Will Levis right now is I'm impressed, and I think he's kind of fighting almost to make sure that he's not going to be a bridge QB because I could see a scenario where the Titans might go if they really fall in love with another guy, with a quarterback. But I think the Colts. Am I crazy for not buying into them at all to being a playoff team and being able to finish off this year? I feel like everybody's overlooking them, and maybe I'm doing them a disservice. They are favored today only by a point. Um, I don't know if I'm crazy, but I just don't see the Colts like at all. Like I see them dropping. I have the Titans winning today too. The Colts don't have a tough schedule at all though. They got the Bengals, Steelers, Falcons, Raiders, and Texans. They got a couple important games there, uh, against the Steelers and the Texans. But outside of that, I mean, the rest of them are pretty winnable. So I don't know if I'm crazy for just like throwing out the Colts.
No, you're not crazy for it because I don't see it either. I don't think they're better than the Texans, honestly. As I feel like that's crazy to say, but I don't think they are. And then the Steelers, I think they're about the same. I don't know, maybe without Matt Canada now, maybe the Steelers have a little bit of an edge, but then those other games against the Falcons and the Raiders and even the Bengals, I think that they can easily take all three of those games, and then I think they're going to win this game against the Titans. So it's not crazy to think. What are they sitting at? 6 wins right now, so
Yeah,
six.
6-5. I mean, yeah,
So they could.
if they win this week, they're 7-5. Obviously, I don't think that they're gonna win. This is the Titans' first stint and with back-to-back home games this year. So I think
Mm,
that definitely helps them a little bit. Um,
okay.
but I just yeah, 7-5 would put the Colts at a spot that I think would help them. Uh uh, Shoot, they might even move, they probably would move up out of the seventh seed and into like what, the fifth seed. That's a pretty good spot to be in.
That would be a good spot to be in. But we got to do. You do have to remember that Jonathan Taylor is out. He has that. What is it? A thumb? Something like that. Some hand injury. I could be mistaken, but he's out for. I think he's out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, he is out for the rest of the season, and it is an
So,
injured thumb.
so that is also something to take into consideration if you're looking at making a bet or something. Definitely have oh my God, Zach Moss in there for because they're gonna definitely use him. But oh
Yeah,
man, you
Zach
might have
Moss is
just
one of the better backup running backs in the league at this
without a
point.
doubt.
When he had to fill in, he was, that was the run game was not the issue when Zach Moss had to fill in. So
Yeah.
I'm not too concerned with that.
Mm, I don't know. You're
And
kind of swaying me. I like the back-to-back home games. Uh, I don't know which way I want to go. You're going Titans.
I'm going with Titans.
Uh, what did I have originally? I got the Colts originally, so I'm gonna stick with it. Give me the Colts.
Well, I like the integrity.
I like the integrity. You gotta respect it. But then talking about another trap game that we got could be for the Steelers facing the Cardinals this week. The Steelers defense, man, it's something else. I've been saying it all season. I think they're one of the best in the NFL. I really like TJ Watt back there. Um, I just don't see how the Cardinals sitting at 2-10. I don't care that they got Kyler Murray. It's just it's not been a good year for the Cardinals, and I don't see how the Steelers are going to trip up at home against them.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be another low scoring game, like we talked about with like the Falcons and the Jets. Um, and you know what? The Steelers, it's the post Matt Canada era. They put up 421 yards of offense last week, but they only had 16 total points against the Cincinnati team without Joe Burrow, who, I don't know how inspired they're playing right now. Um, yeah, I've bought into the Kyler Murray Cardinals. I believe I've picked them every single week now for the last
Uh,
2 weeks, I should say, since he's been back. I'm picking him again. In all honesty,
uh,
I don't know if I'm just like hating on the Colts and the Steelers for being in the playoffs and the Browns too. I'm picking against the Browns when we get to the Rams game as well. I don't know if I'm hating on these teams, trying to push an agenda, trying to hope and pray that I'm right, that these teams are going to fall out and the three teams that I think are going to jump in. But I think Kyler Murray adds something to this squad that does make this Cardinals team a lot better than their record might show.
mhm.
So I'm going to take the Cardinals in this game. Also, it should be noted that the Steelers, in my opinion, I do think that they have a really good defense, but some of these games are against some really bad quarterbacks. Um, they if you look at their last four games before their loss to Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, they've played the Bengals without Joe Burrow, the Browns, and that obviously with their backup quarterback situation, they knocked one of them out too. And
Literally.
the Packers with Jordan Love, I think they could take advantage of a young quarterback, and then the Titans with Will Levis. Um, I don't really see that as like I'm looking at the quarterbacks. I don't really see that as very good, in my
No, yeah.
opinion. Yeah, I mean they have some good wins over teams like the Ravens and the Rams, um, who have a competent starting quarterback. Actually, I don't. I believe Stafford played in the game against the Steelers. Um, I'd have to look back at that, but
He did.
they have some losses against. Yeah, he did play. They have some losses against like the Texans and the 49ers against quarterbacks that are legit.
Mhm.
So I keep that in the back of my head a little bit. I think I'm pushing an agenda right now a little bit against the Steelers. I do think that their defense is really talented, but when a talented quarterback um, comes into town, it's always a little tougher. And any given Sunday, baby, I'm picking upsets this week, Mason. I'm going against the grain. I got a few more too up my sleeve that I haven't even mentioned yet.
All
Um,
right.
I'm going with the Cardinals though.
I'm gonna disagree with you. I think the Steelers are gonna win. But you're 100% fair, and that argument is a pretty good one in my opinion. When you're going up against a very competent quarterback, not saying that those other ones aren't, but they're rookie or they're just not as good. Um, so that argument is great, but I'm still going to go with the Steelers in this one. I think their offense, without having Matt Canada, they were really able to stretch the field a lot more in their last game. And I think they're going to do that again this week against the Cardinals. Next game we got is the Miami Dolphins heading into DC and taking on the Commanders. I don't see this how this game is a loss for the Dolphins. If it is, it would be heartbreaking. What is that? 9.5? Yeah, 9.5. Give me the spread there as well. I'm gonna go Homer for sure. I just don't see how Tua and Tyreek, Raheem Mostert, A-Chan's coming back. Um, our offensive line is definitely beat up a little bit, but I'm sorry. There's no way that the Commanders are gonna be able to outscore the Dolphins, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I'm not picking an upset here.
Okay.
Dolphins take
I
care
was
of
worried.
business. You mentioned it actually earlier. Dolphins take care of business just like the Cowboys do with these lower level teams. And the Commanders just fired their defensive coordinator. Ron Rivera is now calling defensive plays. That's a tall task for anybody, especially Riverboat Ron, the veteran coach in this league, one of the longer tenured coaches in the league. I know, obviously not with the same team, but he's been around the block, seen a thing or two. But this Dolphins team is rolling. Um, Tua just needs to clean it up. He did not play all that well last week. He had a couple picks. One was a pick six. As long as he just cleans that up, I think they should be fine. He's got 10 interceptions though, which I believe is fourth in the NFL. So he just needs to just make sure he doesn't turn the ball over too much against this Commanders team because they're not sorry. they're not they're
No,
not ass. They're pretty
no.
they're they're decent. They're just not in the playoff hunt. And they're
Yeah.
not on the Dolphins level, so they should take care of business. But they can take advantage of the Dolphins if they have a ton of turnovers. And obviously the Dolphins are reeling a little bit from their who was injured? Who got injured?
Jalen Phillips.
Yeah, Jalen
Yeah.
Phillips, yeah. So obviously it's a little bit
Eh,
I don't know.
Did you
Playing for
see
him
the
a little bit. That's just such an unfortunate injury for him. I know we talked about it last episode, but it's just like ugh, you really hate to see that.
on the Hard Knocks episode, he was mic'd up during that game, and just the heartbreak and the shock that he endured from that was so heartbreaking. And yeah, I'm definitely showing my bias here, but I always gotta
Wait.
support my Dolphins. So
No, well, yeah, of course. Have you been watching the Hard Knocks as it's
yeah,
been
I
going
have
on? Yeah,
actually.
I mean, I imagine I would too if it was the Bucks.
hmm Yeah, no, it was heartbreaking for sure, but you know, you got to move on, right? You got to keep going, and that's what the Dolphins are going to keep doing. And so the next game that we're going to talk about is the Denver Broncos and the Houston Texans. This is probably the game of the week in my opinion. Uh, Maybe not the caliber that you're expecting, but it's a playoff game. Both these teams are pretty hot at the moment, especially the Broncos coming on a 5 game win streak. Russell Wilson has not thrown a pick in that 5 game span either. So this game is, oh man, it's not a game that I expected to be a good one before the season started. But now that we're here, they're both sitting at 6-5. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this one before I give my opinion?
Well, the Broncos are forcing a ton of turnovers over the last 4 games. I believe they have 15 forced turnovers. That's been the story. And then obviously Russell Wilson has not been garbage this year, which certainly helps the Broncos cause. I think look, CJ Stroud has come down to earth a tad. Okay. He obviously
Mm,
did not play very well against the Cardinals. Played well against the Jags last week, but they weren't able to win. I think I'm taking the Broncos, and I'm a little scared because I do think that this is a toss up, and this is one of the biggest games of the week. Um, Now, where do the Texans go if they lose this game? I'll say this: I think the Texans are a very good team. But this does worry me because this does feel like almost winning you're in and lose and you might be out because you got some ground to make up. But the
mm,
Texans have the Jets, Titans, Browns, Titans, and Colts.
yep.
That is more than doable. This is the toughest game remaining on their schedule, in my opinion. Obviously, they have 2 games against a division opponent in 3 weeks. That is usually, that's going to get chippy. That's going to be kind of one of those things where I could see them splitting it, but I think they need it so badly. I think they could take care of business and win out straight up. I think
Mm,
that they could end up being 11-6 after potentially losing the Broncos this
yep.
week. So I think that the Texans, with their schedule, they're going to be okay for their playoff hopes. But this does feel like I don't know. This feels like a playoff game. I'm very interested in this. I think we got a treat, honestly, this week
Yep.
with this matchup because not every year you see the Texans and Broncos fighting for a playoff spot,
Yep.
especially after the last couple of years that we've seen with these teams.
Yeah.
And we're fighting for a playoff spot in December.
Yep. Fighting for a playoff spot in week 13, and that's exactly what's happening in this game. Because I think whoever loses this game, I don't think they'll end up making it. And I'm gonna go with the Texans winning this game. They're at home. They're underdogs at home. They're -3, but I think that this win streak for the Broncos has to come to an end at some point, and I think that that's going to be this week. CJ Stroud, as you said, he's not been playing as well as he was to start the season early on, but I think that he's going to find his ground, and I think that D'Amico Ryans is going to have a good game plan for this game against the Broncos, and I don't know, it's just one of those gut feelings. It's probably going to be wrong, knowing how I go, but you know, I
Honestly, though, honestly, I could see this game being. I could see it going both ways. I
no,
could see
yeah,
it both. I'm just riding the Broncos right now until they fall off because I'm really bought into Russell Wilson and Sean Payton being a duo for a long time coming. I'm on that train. I mean, there's really nothing that shows me that this isn't going to be the tandem for the next few years.
Mhm.
But also it should be noted that CJ Stroud did not have a great game a couple weeks ago, but his completion percentage is still off the charts. I believe 72 and 74% in the last few games. And then he's obviously throwing for well over 300 yards in most of these games. So he's still playing extremely well. Um, so no hate to CJ Stroud.
No, not at all. Regardless, it's going to be a great game, and I think it's good for football that we have essentially a playoff game in week 13. So,
Yeah, we got a few of these. We
yeah.
have a few of these. I would say even the Saints Lions game feels a bit like a playoff game too.
Yeah, for sure. Because the Saints, they're definitely fighting for it right now, and the Lions, I mean, they're trying to prove that they can win their division, and they're still fighting for that. So we definitely do got a couple of them, but one that's probably not as much of a playoff game is the Carolina Panthers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Carolina just fired Frank Reich. Tampa Bay sitting at 4-7, really kind of after what seemed like a very positive start to the year, they've kind of fallen off for sure. I'm sure you can talk to that more as the resident Bucks fan here on the podcast. But yeah, with the Panthers, maybe they get a little rah-rah and they get behind their new head coach or their interim head coach. What isn't it? Who was it? Was it their special teams coordinator that's now their head coach? I can't even remember. And then I know they got rid of a couple guys, Josh McCown being one of them, the quarterback's coach. Maybe he wasn't good for Bryce Young. Who knows? But either way, both of these teams are struggling mightily in all fashions. But I think Tampa Bay is just the better team here, and you got to take them.
So when I pick these games, I don't really see like the Bucks. Like I don't let that like get into my mental state. I don't let my Bucks phantom get in the way of me trying to pick these games correctly, especially considering that they're not all that great this year and they have fallen off from their start, of the year, which I could have guessed, honestly. But circling back, before I say why I think the Panthers are going to win this game.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Right when you started talking, I had a feeling I was like, "There's no way."
Their interim coach is their special teams coach. And it should be noted that when a team has or brings in the interim coach, doesn't it seem like they always play well that first week? I mean,
Yes.
look, when you're on a really bad team like this, you're not making the playoffs. The Panthers have already been eliminated, and you don't have your pick for next year. You don't have it. The Bears have it. So, like, I think at a certain point, you got dudes uh, you know, the head coach is playing is motivated because he's in a position that he might never be in again. And he's got what, 5 games left in the year to show that he's an NFL head coach, to show the rest of the world that he's an NFL head coach. He's motivated. And you got dudes on this roster fighting for their roster spot. This is almost like training camp all over again. You got 5 more weeks. You're not just playing for a check, but you're playing for the rest of your checks because there's going to be an overhaul with this team. This team could potentially be, now I think, 2-15, but this team could potentially be 1-16, one of the worst teams that we've ever seen in the history of the National Football League, just record wise. So
Hmm.
you got a lot of guys, I think, that are going to be playing tough and playing hard out there. You obviously can't mail it in the NFL, or you're just going to get whacked and get hurt. But I like the energy that comes with an interim head coach in the first week. After that, I'm out. But usually you can see him playing hard. And as far as the Bucks, they're not eliminated right now, but they're dealing with so much. Is Baker really even 100% ready to go? Is Todd Bowles going to be there next year? I don't know. I mean, is Mike Evans, like, he might be gone? There's a lot of different stuff. I think that just looking at this through a vacuum, um, I think that the Panthers are going to play some inspired football this week, and the Bucks are on the consistent decline. Although they're not eliminated from the division contention somehow, some way, with the anemic NFC South. But Give me the Panthers to go to 2-10 because why not? Any given Sunday divisional game.
All right. That you had
That's my
you had a
spiel.
fair argument. That's all against your team. Just remember that. That's against your team. I'm sorry, I can't do that. Um I do understand and agree with the when you get an interim coach that first week, it just there's some weird aura that they just rally behind him and they get him that win. But I just don't see it. Not with this team. Not with the Panthers, man. Not with the Panthers. So give me the Bucks. Next game, we got the Cleveland Browns taking on the Los Angeles Rams. This is a fascinating matchup, in my opinion, because the Cleveland Browns are going to be led by Joe Flacco. That to me is wild because obviously Joe Flacco is very used to the North, to the AFC North, but with the Ravens. And his last team that he played for was the Jets, and he's been out of the league this entire season. And the Cleveland Browns were like, "Oh shoot, we need a quarterback," and they went to a guy that would beat up on them for many, 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 many years. I don't think it's going to do anything for him. I don't think I don't think Joe Flacco is going to light up the scoreboard at all. I think if he gets one touchdown, that's a victory. But again, this defense is fantastic, and it's the reason that they're sitting at 7-4. And then the Rams, they've just been a weird team all season. They're sitting at 5-6. I don't know. If Matthew Stafford is able to figure out this defense, then yeah, the Rams will win. But if not, I think Joe Flacco coming out off the couch is able to manage a game pretty well and can get the Browns to a victory.
Joe Flacco off the couch. Yeah, I know. It's kind of crazy. Isn't it wild that this man won a Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP, got the car and everything?
Hmm.
I mean, Joe Flacco was an elite quarterback at one point in the NFL.
Yep.
And now he's just kind of filling in. This is interesting. We've seen this a lot this year where a quarterback just off the street or just
Hmm.
not on the team has learned the playbook well enough to just be inserted in the lineup. But I gave away my hand, or I showed my hand a little bit earlier when I said that I was picking against all of those AFC teams that were in the playoffs right now. I'm going to go with the Rams as well. I think the return of Kyron Williams helps his team a lot. And
Hmm.
we didn't mention them when we were talking about the Seahawks, but they are fighting for a playoff spot as well in
Yep.
that division. And I'm very I'm very intrigued. I'm looking at this. I could see a path for them to make the playoffs. They hadn't scored above 20 points since Kyron Williams came back. Last week they did. He ran for 143 yards and caught 2 touchdowns. I think that really helps Matt Stafford out. I think he really needs that right now. Stafford is low key washed at this point. Now they did play the Cardinals last week, so I can't really talk too much, although I am higher on the Cardinals than maybe anybody else in the world. But
Hmm.
so I'm gonna tail it back a little bit. Especially going against the Browns defense. That's a way bigger task than the Cardinals defense. But I like what I'm seeing from the Rams, and I think they have a lot to play for as well in this game. And I don't think anybody's really talking about it. And I think this is the kind of game that gets people talking. I think the Rams are
Well,
going to win. Also, I think that the line is 3.5. I don't know if you mentioned that. I think they're going to cover that as well.
mm,
Um, I don't know how many points they're going to end up scoring. I don't know if they're going to get into the 30s or anything like that on this Browns defense, one of the best defenses in the league. But I just don't see the Browns offense scoring any more than like 17.
10. Oh,
Yo,
okay.
10 to 17.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I was about to say 17-10 Rams, something around there. I can agree. I'll go with that as well. I think it's a fair argument, and yeah, I don't think the Browns' offense is. I don't know. I'm just not that confident in it. I still think that Joe Flacco can manage a game, but you're right. Kyron Williams coming back is a huge boost for that Rams team. So we shall see. But moving on to the next team in that same division in the West, the 49ers are going out East and going to Philadelphia and taking on the Eagles. This is a NFC championship game rematch that the 49ers have had circled on their calendar since that last game, since that NFC championship game. Philadelphia, listen, they're sitting at 10-1. You got to respect them for it, but the narrative is this might be one of the worst 10-1 teams that we've ever seen. And that one loss coming to the New York Jets, like what? You're gonna let the New York Jets tarnish a perfect season? How rude and how unacceptable. But I don't know, man. This tush push and the Eagles team, man, it's really, really good. I can't argue it. They're just scraping by in these games, but that's what good teams do. They find a way to win games. And the 49ers, they had that little streak where they lost those three in a row, but they got Christian McCaffrey back there. They got Ayuk, they got Debo, they got Kittle, and then Purdy's able to just pick and choose his weapons. I don't know. I'm gonna go with the Eagles at home here. I think that tush push is just gonna be too much, and they're gonna find a way to to outscore and win and beat the 49ers.
Yeah. The Eagles are underdogs at home,
Yeah.
which I think is pretty amazing. Um, I don't know where this stems from exactly. If this is from the NFC Championship game that's 10 months ago when the 49ers just had, no quarterback essentially by the end of the game. And is there a feeling that everybody thinks that the 49ers are better than the Eagles or they match up well against the Eagles? Like, I have no idea where this line is coming from necessarily. I do think that the Eagles are going to win this game. But I think we're going to learn a lot about both teams. I think we're going to know exactly who's the best team after this game, in my opinion, in the NFC. Um, but I don't think even with a loss here, if the Eagles were to lose, I don't think that the 49ers are going to catch them as far as like getting a bye in the first week. Now they would have the head-to-head victory over them, but I don't think that they would catch them record-wise. So I think this is more of just like a measuring stick kind of game rather than fighting for a bye kind of game.
I mean, if the Eagles were to lose this game, then they go and they have to play Dallas. And Dallas coming off of a nice win, Dak playing at an MVP level. I mean, it could be a little two-game losing streak for the Eagles. And then the 49ers are right there. And so, same with the Cowboys. The Cowboys could be right there. So it, if the Eagles don't win this game, I would be nervous for next week because I think momentum is a real thing. And if they lost this week, I can see it also happening next week against the Cowboys. So we'll have to see. Who was your pick for this one, though? You said Eagles?
Eagles. Yeah.
Okay. Eagles over the 49ers. And then in the nightcap, we got Kansas City taking on Green Bay. I think this will be Kansas City all the way. Prime time, this is just where they shine. And Jordan Love in his, what is it? Is this his first? No, it's not his first primetime game because he played on Thanksgiving. But I think the Kansas City offense that it's going to do too much. I think Travis Kelce's going to come out and he's going to have himself a game. He needs to show out for Taylor. He's. I feel like things have been kind of. I don't know. Things have been seeming a little rocky over there. I don't know, but
It's
yeah,
quiet, all quiet on the Western Front over there.
it's been quiet. Right.
Sometimes, man, you got to get out of the public eye. People
Fair
talk.
enough.
You got to keep it on down low.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But who do you got for this one? Because I got the Kansas City.
Yeah, I got Kansas City too. We could keep this one pretty short. I
Yeah.
like the Packers, they're trying to get, their third straight win. Maybe there's something here. The Chiefs kind of played with their food a little bit last week against the Raiders, but I don't really see too much from the Packers in this game specifically.
Yeah. And in the final game on Monday night, we got the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. With Joe Burrow being out, the Cincinnati Bengals team is different. They're not the same. They're not that sexy, flashy team that they are when he's on the field. So give me Jacksonville taking the victory here at home. The line is 9. I think that's a lot, but with what Jake Browning as the quarterback, I guess it's understandable. But
Yeah, big week for Washington football. Shout out Jake Browning. But yeah, I think and the Jags, honestly, if they had lost last week to the Texans, this game probably would have meant a lot more for them. Now, I don't think so much. I think the pressure's now on the Texans to beat the Broncos this week. And I think the Jags are kind of more in a not like celebration mode, but they haven't been on Monday Night Football in 12 years, which is kind of
Holy
amazing. Yeah. So
wow.
they're definitely in like a we've arrived kind of situation right now. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words at exactly what I think that this means for their team or their organization. Um, but I think they're in a really good spot. And I think this is kind of almost a homecoming game for them a little bit. This game would have been very, very important had the Bengals had Joe Burrow, because they obviously would have been fighting for a playoff spot. But I think they're just going to continue to slide. Um, one thing that I do want to pose to you
All right.
for the Bengals is head coach.
Mm,
With
no.
I'm not saying that he would get fired, but I mean, I wish I could pull up the games specifically that he has had or coached without Joe Burrow. It hasn't been that great this year at all.
No.
And
I
it
mean,
seems like he's really the franchise, Joe Burrow is. That it's not like this marriage that we have, like between Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow. Like it doesn't seem like they're attached at the hip kind of thing.
do you think there's turmoil there?
I don't think that like there's like beef, but I definitely think that like if comes to shove, like
Oh,
I
if push comes to shove, it's Joe Burrow over Zach Taylor for sure, in
oh
my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah, yeah, but I mean like I don't think I could see him getting fired ever mid-season. I think especially right now, but like
Mm,
what if they have a disappointing year again next year and Joe Burrow has like an injury or something where he's out for a couple games and they lose those games? I mean, I think there would have to be some sort of like evaluation to be like, oh, dude,
mhm.
Zach Taylor is not the kind of coach without Joe Burrow that we think he is.
I mean, part of being in the NFL is managing disaster. I mean, look at what Robert Saleh's having to do in New York. I mean, he was expected to have Aaron Rodgers, a Hall of Fame quarterback, the entire season, and with a top five defense. Like it, things don't go to plan, and if as a head coach you can't handle that, you can't manage that, that's a problem. So if they were to have another bad year next year without Joe Burrow, if he were to get hurt or whatever happens, I definitely think evaluation is fair. I mean, he's he's led his team to a Super Bowl, Zach Taylor has, but your only as recency is more important than your entire bio, in my opinion.
Yeah, what have you done
So
for me lately?
exactly, exactly. What have you done for me lately? And what has happened lately with Zach Taylor is subpar performance. And I mean, the team that you have is what you have on the field, and you have to win with that team. So if he's not able to win with whatever's on the field, you got to figure it out.
Also, I think it's pretty important too, in a sense, for Zach Taylor to be able to be a coach or the Bengals to have a coach that can
Mhm.
handle not having their starting quarterback every single week because Joe Burrow has had a fair amount of
Lots of
injuries in his
injuries.
career now.
Yeah.
So it's not like ridiculous for me to say like, oh, next year he could have like, a knee injury that keeps him out for 4 to 5 games. Unfortunately, but he's had injuries and he had them in college and he's missed some time. So
Sure, for sure.
um I think I don't think it's unreasonable. But you got the Jags too in this game, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I got some upsets. You don't really have very many, I think. You're kind of
I don't
going chalk again
nah.
this week. I don't know. Maybe I'm going against the grain.
I'm playing
I
it
feel
safe.
confident.
Playing it
You
safe.
okay, do you have a lock this week?
I have a lock.
We'll do something like that. Yeah, any of these games that you're looking at that you're like, you know what, there's no doubt that this team loses.
No doubt that this team loses at all. No doubt.
Or that this team
Can
wins. Of course, you could look at it from both sides.
No, I think my lock is going to be Kansas City over Green Bay on the primetime game for tonight, or not tonight, for tomorrow night. I just don't see Green Bay doing much against this Kansas City team. So that's going to be my lock.
I'm gonna go Chargers over Patriots.
Okay, I thought about that too,
I think
but
I think they would have to we would need like the Secret Service to get Brandon Staley out of there. Um,
Yeah.
if or to get him back to LA, because I believe they're playing in Foxborough.
Yep.
We would need some extra security to get him back. Like they would, I don't think he could get on the plane back if they were to lose. So I think that there's just no way that they lose this game.
Yep.
But
Yep.
those have been our picks for week 13 of the NFL season. This has been the Streakers Podcast, second episode on video. I'm Patrick Previty. That's Mason Migliara. We'll be back next week reviewing all of the great football that we're about to get this weekend and potentially talking a little bit of the NBA because the in-season tournament will be kicking off more than likely during the next episode. So see you then.